Samuel news is hit, and it's big. He's requested a trade. More on that in a minute.
Let's go get him. Let's go get him today, man. Let's go. Hey, dominate on 3. 1, 2, 3. Dominate.
Welcome back to an episode of the 49ers Red Zone. This is your boy Marco with my boy Rohan. How's it going, Rohan?
Doing good. Busy day for sure with a lot of news. How you doing?
I'm doing great. It's something like soon as that news came out, I was kind of like, yeah, I was expecting it. It was one of those ones that I've been talking about. We've been talking about on the podcast about Deebo's contract situation, which I've been giving updates, and I've been saying constantly that I think Deebo is going to be moved. I really do. And when that news came out from Jeff Darlington, that's who it was from, right?
Yeah,
I was like, I'm not shocked. I was not shocked one bit.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the timeline shaped itself out, right? Oh, I remember April 6th, a lot of people were talking, oh my God, social media is not a big deal, guys. And then Deebo Samuel himself told Grant Cohn, guys, don't worry about everything. Well, guess what? Apparently, per source, Deebo Samuel requested a trade on April 6th, somewhere between 6th to 8th. He requested a trade. What happened on the 8th? Stephon Diggs got a $70 million $70 million guaranteed deal. So yeah, it all accounts. And Deebo Samuel scrubbing his page is very correlated with this trade request and the discrepancy between him and the 49ers. So it's certainly interesting. But you're right. Like we've been somewhat predicting this in a way. It's like the main thing that we talked about, right, is, or before we get to that, question on the board. Deebo doesn't want a deal done. Do you think that's really the case?
No, man. I think that's the 49ers speaking through the media. Like, what player in their right mind doesn't want to get a deal done, right? Like, so for example, if the 49ers offered a contract very close to what Deebo Samuel was requesting, I guarantee you they would negotiate a contract to meet in the happy medium and they would get it done, right? We're really going to see, are we really going to, like, fans really going to sit here and be like, oh, Deebo doesn't want to get paid? Like, he's going to decline 60 plus million guaranteed money? No, this is the 49ers trying to get out in front and trying to say, hey, we had a good trade. We had a good contract offer on the table, but Deebo just doesn't want to get a contract done. This is the 49ers using the media platform that John Lynch has created when he was in the booth with guys like Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport. This is him using that media personality and saying, hey, look, let me throw this to you guys. You guys go out and get some move on it. Having them say,
go ahead.
So having them say like, oh, Deebo doesn't want to get it done because Deebo's requesting a trade. This is Deebo, not the 49ers. Now you starting to see the 49ers fan base, even on social media, right? So if we look at the past couple of weeks, the 49ers social media people, everyone on social media following the 49ers and everything was, oh, fire John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan's ridiculous, pay Deebo. And now it's all of a sudden it's, oh, well, Deebo's requesting a trade. Well, let's get the best trade package we can for him. Good job, Niners. As long as you guys get the best you can, you guys are doing great. It's like you see how that narrative has changed because of how the 49ers organization got out in front and said, hey, we offered a good enough deal. He just doesn't want to get it done. It is the 49ers who don't want to get the deal done, not Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting, right? Because first of all, the big news, there were two things that happened yesterday. The first was Adam Schefter coming out and saying, guys, the 49ers are at the table. Deebo Samuel is unwilling recently to get a deal done. And then the second was his own brother going out on Facebook. I mean, his own brother slipped up in a way. It seems like they probably shouldn't have released that because Deebo Samuel requested the trade that his brother already predicted this morning via Jeff Darlington. But then guess what? People don't like Adam Schefter. So what do the 49ers do? Go to Ian Rappaport, the most trusted source in all of football. Guys, Deebo Samuel has been unwilling. The 49ers have been trying to negotiate a deal over the last 2 weeks with Deebo Samuel since the trade request. Well, why is he unwilling? When you reach the point of a trade request, that means that you have been at a point, You have been negotiating before the trade request, and it was so insulting that you had to get to the point. There's a reason that he's been unwilling, and that is because the trade request was initially formed on the April 6th to April 8th date. So over the last 2 weeks, why has he been unwilling? Well, it's because he was willing beforehand, insulted him too much with your lowball offer, probably of being a running back type of player. And so that's what happened here. So it is the 49ers trying to get in front of the media, right? Because when you do that, well, guess what? Oh, if a player don't want to be here, let him go. We don't want him. It's now that kind of thing, right? And so it's interesting how the media works because everyone's talking about how Deebo Samuel is using the power of the media to express his narrative. Well, the 49ers are doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, and I think what you hit the nail on the head on saying how it had to the contract negotiations been going on for 2 to 3 weeks, right? And
Right.
since April 6th, April 8th, whatever the case may be, Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport have reported those dates, right? So within that time, the 49ers had to have negotiated something, and they've had been lowballing him and telling him that this is how we feel about you, right? And then all
Uh-huh.
of a sudden, we do see him scrub his entire Instagram. We see his brother go out on social media saying, "Hey, by the way, we're pretty much already requested a trade," kind of how thing. His brother came out and said that. People are like, oh, his brother's talking out of his ass. And then his brother goes out and is like, oh, I apologize. It was just me speaking out, messing around with the fans, toying around. And then this happened. It's like it's not a coincidence that happened. It's
Mhm.
everything has been playing how I've been saying it was going to happen. I've been telling you, I don't think they're going to get a contract done because of the guaranteed money that he's going to want, and he deserves the guaranteed money that he's requesting. It's not a um, situation where the 49ers fans should be turning on Deebo now and be like, oh, get him out of here. Go, you know what? Hopefully the Jets send pick 10, 35, 38, and another future pick for him. No,
Yeah.
literally, this is where we've been headed down this entire process. And now the 49ers are turning it on Deebo. And this is what happens with every big star. If we look at A.J. Brown, for example,
He's having the
A.J.
same
Brown is
thing.
a very similar situation, right? Like the Tennessee Titans media is bashing AJ Brown, calling him a not a good teammate, this and that. And it's like, why are they doing this? To bring their value down so they can get a contract extension done. These players are going into their prime. These players want to get paid going into their prime. And for me, I think Deebo requesting a trade is a good thing for Deebo Samuel. If there's going to be a team that wants to pay Deebo Samuel, if the 49ers don't, by all means, Deebo, go get your bag. And I'm never going to tell a player he's wrong for wanting
Right.
to get paid. That's one thing I won't do. That's his money. I'm not going to mess with his pockets. You know what I mean? But I think it's interesting though, Rohan, how the fan base instantly, as soon as Rappaport and Adam Schefter go on and say, "Oh, this is not Deebo Samuel. This is the 49. This is not the 49ers. This is Deebo Samuel's doing." How
Mhm.
rapidly they change within 2 days. Like that is to me that is a very big jump in terms of how they moved on the scale of Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, I want to bring this up just real quick. Tim Kawakami of The Athletic, he said he heard that the 49ers were very, very solid in offering much less than the 25 million per year and the 72.2 million guaranteed, which is to Tyreek Hill. But you nailed it on the bat. Guaranteed money is very important. When you look at the 49ers organization, what are the numbers in terms of guaranteed at signing? I'll just go with guaranteed at signing. There are multiple stipulations that you can look at, but guaranteed at signing is important. Recently, the 49ers have not been, I mean, not even recently, just in the John Lynch Shanahan era, the 49ers haven't been that bullish about signing players this big. And that's because Parag Marathe isn't that high on these players that get signed to big contracts guaranteed at signing. The highest was Trent Williams, 48.1 million. And when you look at it in comparison to his $138 million deal, it's not that much. And the only reason that he got that money is because Kyle Shanahan at the last minute forced Parag Marathe's hand, said, I want him on the team, keep him. Well, look at it now. Like last year before that, it was Jimmy Garoppolo at 40 million. It jumped up to 48. Well, the 49ers are going to have to do the exact same thing if they want to retain Deebo Samuel, because first of all, Tyreek Hill has 52.5 million guaranteed at signing. The 49ers are probably going to have to eclipse that, or if not, at least eclipse 50 million, because Stephon Diggs is at 47. Deebo Samuel will want at least 50 in guarantees, and that's the biggest thing. And for those of you saying, "Oh, Deebo Samuel can just take 30 million a year, we'll pay him low in guarantees," that's not how his agent works, and we got proof of that this week. Who was the cornerback that got signed this week to a massive NFL record-breaking deal? Denzel Ward. Who is his agent? Tory Dandy. And why is that important? Well, when you look at the deals this offseason, who was the other cornerback that was so prestigious this offseason that was signed? That was J.C. Jackson. J.C. Jackson was supposed to break the market, and he didn't. He got a 5-year, $82.5 million deal, $40 million in guarantees. And guess what? Denzel Ward, he's a great player, young player, but not at the caliber of a J.C. Jackson, not at the caliber of a Stephon Gilmore, and sorry, not Stephon Gilmore, sorry, Jalen Ramsey. He's not at the caliber of the top tier cornerbacks. He's a good cornerback, a very above average cornerback, but maybe not at the top tier. And why does that matter? Well, guess what? What did his agent end up doing? His agent ended up breaking the bank for Denzel Ward. When you look at the money guaranteed at signing, Denzel Ward eclipsed every single cornerback, $44.5 million. He eclipsed every cornerback in the practical guarantee money too, $71.25 million guaranteed in total. So he is breaking the bank for a player that Tory Dandy is breaking the bank for a player that is not necessarily the best player at his position. And that's why I think it's super important for the Deebo Samuel thing, because for all of you saying, oh, he's not going to get paid more than Devontae Adams or Stephon Diggs or any of those players, well, guess what? This is a precedent, and it shows that he will be.
And what you just said, right? Like you're using the Denzel Ward, the recent negotiated contract that Tory Dandy just did, right? Now,
Right.
Tory Dandy had a great Denzel Ward is a very good corner. He's a
Yeah.
Pro Bowl corner and everything. But now when you're using an all pro receiver, right? You're throwing that all pro. Hey, well, this dude's an all pro. Like you what we talking about, right? So
Yeah.
that's what he's gonna go out onto the table and he's gonna say, hey, well, stop offering my guy as a wide back. He is an all pro receiver.
Right.
He at the middle of the season, he was already at 1,000 yards, this and that, and he has a great argument, right? So the end of the day, the fact that Deebo Samuel has reached that point of requesting a trade, liking these tweets on social media. He even went
Mhm.
out of his way and liked a tweet of him in a Dallas Cowboys uniform. So the fact that he's doing this and that, it just shows that he's done. I don't care if people were saying, well, he'll be back with the 49ers. There's a possibility he will be back. The 49ers could play hardball. They could say, you know what we're going to do? We're going to keep you on the roster. We're going to go into the following year. You're going to play that year. If you don't play, you sit out. You lose an accrued season. And if you don't play that year, well, the following year you'll be on our roster. And then what we're going to end up doing is you're going to play. We're going to franchise tag you, and then we'll trade you because we're going to get more out of you, and we're still going to get the draft capital that we want because we're going to use you in a certain way to take advantage of what you can do in our offense. So the 49ers do have the upper hand in the Deebo Samuel saga, but at the end of the day, Deebo Samuel has the upper hand in terms of, you know what? I'll just sit out. I don't care if I lose an accrued season. And that's what I think what players might start doing after we just saw and it wasn't Deshaun Watson doing it on purpose. Deshaun Watson did it because of his legal scandal. We saw Le'Veon Bell do it. It backfired on Le'Veon Bell a little bit, but we might see players do this in order to get their way and get to a team that they want. Because at the end of the day, if Deebo Samuel isn't doing this for money, I think that he's doing this because of where he wants to be. Does he want to be closer to family? Does he love living in California? Probably not. Like a lot of situations we look at, he likes training in Florida. He has a house out there. He likes that side. He likes the East Coast. So if he really wants to be somewhere, he's going to make it happen. And at the end of the day, I really do think the 49ers went into this negotiation treating Deebo Samuel as a wide back. And I was saying for a while, if the 49ers try to negotiate a contract for Deebo Samuel as a wide back, it would backfire. Because if you look at the market at the running back, the Ezekiel Elliott's, the Christian McCaffrey's, the Alvin Kamara's, if we look at those contracts, the guaranteed money is around 50. If we look at the top 5 receivers, the guaranteed money is around 60, right? It's in that range of 60, 65, right? So we're talking 10 to 15 million dollars in terms of guaranteed money. And a receiver at Deebo Samuel's caliber, he's not going to say, you know what? Yeah, I'll definitely take $15 million less. It does not make sense for a player going into his prime, especially when he's playing that running back role. And as a running back, those miles on a running back, I don't know if you're familiar with the terms of city miles versus highway miles, right? Freeway miles.
Right.
They're much different. They're worse. They're worse on a player. So that's the thing where Deebo Samuel has to make sure he's taking care of his body. And I think what he's doing is a wise decision by a young man who's like, you know what? I only played that role because you guys needed me to. I'm a legit receiver. Pay me as one.
Yeah, and I mean it's fair, right? When you look at the point about Deebo Samuel and the 49ers in terms of leverage, I agree. I do think the 49ers have the leverage. I think they have 95% of the leverage, but Deebo Samuel, what has he shown this offseason? Even if he doesn't have leverage, he has power. And the one thing you don't want, even like with the team, is a disgruntled star that makes your franchise look bad. And that's what Deebo Samuel currently is doing because the way that the 49ers have handled the situation, I don't think that the 49ers have handled it like well enough to the point that I don't think the 49ers have handled the situation well enough to the point that Deebo Samuel himself is going to be happy in a way. And so when you have a disgruntled star, obviously that's not a good look on your locker room. No, less players are going to be incentivized to sign with you. And so I think that it does have a negative impact, even if you can't necessarily, even if you necessarily hold the rights to his contract. I don't think he holds out. I don't think players hold out with the new CBA, just because I think that when you look at the new CBA rules, right, you lose all your money and you lose the accrued season, and then you don't turn to an unrestricted free agent. You turn to restricted free agency, which is different, and the 49ers then can sign him to a very cheap deal, which then loses them even more money. And I do think that at the end of the day, it is about money. So while the 49ers can play him, if he's disgruntled, that's not a good look on the franchise. And then if they franchise tag him, they go through the same turmoil next offseason, which takes the focus away from the main prerogative, which is winning a championship. But when you look at Deebo Samuel, yeah, I'm sure he's not excited about his usage because it's probably because like when you look at Deebo Samuel's like in terms of usage, I don't think it's necessarily he's not excited about that, but he doesn't want to be paid at the like in a way he doesn't feel. And if you're trying to pay him as a running back, that's not going to fly by him because he believes he's a true wide receiver and was forced to play running back because the 49ers had a need at the position.
And I think too, like, so Debo deserves to be frustrated with the 49ers organization. The thing is, I don't necessarily believe that it makes the locker room start talking and makes the locker room frustrated, right? Yeah, even if you do trade one of your best players, the locker room tends to they don't like talking about people's money. They don't like to be in that situation where like, oh, hey, did you hear Debo wants this much money and he's not going to take it? And like they literally, it's a business. They all understand it, so they kind of like keep away from like their each other's contracts. It's like something in the locker room they don't people really don't talk about. They hey, you take care of your pockets. I'm not going to worry about your pockets kind of thing unless it's for example you're trying to get that incentive. Then during the game or during the team meetings, they're like, hey, I'm like 50 yards away from an incentive. I hope I could get that. And they talk to each other, hey, to try to get them that incentive and whatnot. So I do
Right.
think Debo Samuel gets moved. Now the big thing is
Interesting.
what is a fair trade package for him, right? Like because the draft is coming up. Do the 49ers hold on to Deebo Samuel this year and try to have him play one more year? And then eventually they allow the 49ers to or the 49ers eventually trade him off. So that's something that we go and we have a guy in the room that wants to jump in, David Lichty. We're gonna ask him what a fair trade package would be.
Hey guys, you guys hear me all right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, man, I'm sitting here. It's an interesting thought. I think that it depends on the team. I think that I was just looking at Debo's production. I think that it's always eye-opening how productive he really was. Yards over per reception, over
Right.
expectation. I mean, I think that's what the 49ers, they don't have to sell anybody on it. They already know that. So I think what you're looking at with the Tyreek Hill deal, it's going to surpass the Devontae Adams deal, which is just a first and a second. Tyreek Hill had a late first, late second, and then those sweeteners in day 3. I think that if you're looking at like a team like the Eagles, I think the conversation starts at either you're going at 15 and 18, one of those picks. You're looking at, I believe it's 51. And I think that you push for, maybe you try to include 83. And if the 49ers want to throw in a 4th-round pick in return, something like that, I think that's doable. If you're looking at the Jets, Joe Douglas seems to be maybe a little reluctant to get rid of 10. But if he wants, if you can say, hey, I'm looking at the 10th pick, I'm looking at 35 or 38. Let's start the conversation there. And then if the 49ers can make that deal before the draft and they want to move down from 10, I just think if you're the Jets, look, you've got 4 and 10. You got 35 and 38. I don't know if they have I think they may have 2 third-round picks. Maybe only one. To me, if you're serious about getting a guy who's an, bona fide MVP candidate, offensive player of the year candidate, I don't know if 10 is necessarily too rich. I mean, 10 and 38, maybe that gets it done when they're trying to compete with other teams. So I think I like the Eagles package. I like that. I think they have a lot of capital to give up, but I still think the Jets are in it. I do.
Oh yeah, the Jets definitely have to be in it, like especially because they're in the Tyreek Hill saga. They've been in other players. They've been in guys like I believe Calvin Ridley, like so stuff like that. So like we know that the Jets are definitely looking for a receiver. The Philadelphia Eagles are definitely looking for a receiver. So these are two teams that have the packages to go out and get Deebo Samuel. But at the end of the day, is what is a fair trade package? Because we're not necessarily trying to um, look at something, right? So, like, in terms of fair trade package, we're more so talking about like, do you think the 49ers could get a first, a second? What's fair? Is 2 seconds fair? Is a first and a second a good deal? Because at the end of the day, yes, Deebo Samuel is younger. He has put up the stats to back up of him being an elite player. But is he as good as the guys like Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams? Has he proved over a period of time that he deserves to be spoken with those guys because we still have guys like AJ Brown who could potentially be on the trade market, DK Metcalf. But we could argue that those guys might be better overall receivers than Deebo Samuel. There is a fair argument if a fan from one of those teams came to me and argued it, I would not tell them they were wrong because it is a fair argument to have. So, do you think 1 first and 1 second is fair? 2 seconds and a third is fair? What do you think is fair in terms of trade value?
I think the other thing is that now I believe that Devontae is 29. Deebo or Tyreek is just
28.
a shade. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Tyreek Hill is just a shade younger than 2. He's less than 2 years older than Deebo, but he's been he came into his career a little bit earlier. So, so I think Deebo's going to be 26. I think he's still 25. I think you're getting Deebo in his prime, and I think you're getting the ascending player. A lot of people said it's just 1 year of production. Could that be a fluke? I think the problem with that is I've really thought about that. I might even been guilty of that a little bit in the past myself. And when you really look at Deebo and what he was able to do, this is a guy who routinely put his team on his back when they needed to in the playoffs with mediocre quarterback play on the road, doorstep away on the doorstep of another Super Bowl. And like I said, the Niners don't have to fabricate any type of like marketing for this. And that's where I think me, Marco, like I've said that I think Tyreek Hill is a more dynamic player with his speed is different, right? Devontae Adams is the best route runner in the league. He's wide receiver 1. Thing is, man, the more you look back on it, what's tantalizing for these teams is that Deebo is that unique blend of vision, acceleration, toughness, the yards per route run, yards after contact per carry per reception. It's just there's just not guys like him, that can do all of that. He can return. I mean, when push came to shove. Yeah.
So with everything you're saying, like, real quick, do you think a first and a second is good? Well, give us a fair trade package, not necessarily a team. What do you think is a fair deal?
I think a fair deal is. I really feel like it's got to be. I think it depends where the first is, Marco. Right? Like if it was like the Detroit Lions giving. I'm not saying the Detroit Lions, but let's say it's like 32. Well, 32 is different than 18, right? So I still think first and a second, and I actually would like to see. I think first, second, and the third can get it done. And if that means the 49ers put like a day 3 pick back in return, or maybe it's a future pick. I think it's a first and a second with a third or a future pick. I think that will get it done. I think there's enough teams that want his services, and they know he's a unique player that along that often. That's ready to roll.
Sounds good. Thank you, David, for tuning in and hopping in with us with a few other guys in the studio. So we're going to get to them. Thank you, David.
See you, dudes. Thanks for having me.
Let's go to Cesar Ramos. Talk to us about the Deebo Samuel saga. Oh, Cesar not there. Let's go to
A.
Are you there, Ray? There to talk to us about Deebo?
We'll put them in the studio, and then when they come back up, we'll bring them back out. But
So because
speaking about what David said, essentially about the one and the two, I do think that it's interesting. And one thought that I had, kind of, I want to run by you because it was just me thinking late last night, and I don't know if it necessarily makes sense. But in this year's draft, I think if the 49ers were looking to trade Deebo Samuel, I think that honestly, the 10th overall pick is more valuable than the number one overall pick. And I'll tell you why. I think the 10th overall pick is tradable. I don't think the number one overall pick is tradable, at least with the 49ers and their propensity for just gaining value and being stubborn in the way that they try and get value for everything. I think they'd settle and take a player at number one overall. But at 10, you can trade back once or twice, accumulate assets in the middle rounds, and end up with 4 to 5 starting caliber players and out of this draft that just help your team and elevate your floor going into 2022. That's something that I was thinking. I want to see your thoughts on that.
So the 10th overall pick is very valuable. And I'm going to say not necessarily because they could trade back, but because they have the option to do a lot of things. They could go and they could get the best player on the board at the time. They could get a receiver, they could get a corner. They're still in range to get an edge rusher. So they could get a player who was going to step in immediately and have an impact. But like you said, it is that tradable piece where they could go out and number 10 is that spot where we might see the first quarterback go off the board. It's around 8 to 10 where we might see that first quarterback go off the board. So if Seattle passes on quarterback, 10 is a prime position for players to or teams to jump up to 10 and get a quarterback. So we could trade with a team like Pittsburgh Steelers, the New Orleans Saints who have 2 first rounders. And the thing is, they could get a first next year because teams are jumping up to get a quarterback. And when you're getting a quarterback, you tend to overpay because you have to do stuff like that. So I
Right.
think the 49ers, if they were to get 10 straight up, you could turn 10 into a first rounder this year, a first rounder next year, and potentially another pick in that range, right? So I think the
Right.
10th overall pick is extremely valuable in this draft, especially if the 49ers have that pick. I think Deebo
Yeah.
Samuel, if the 49ers get creative, and this is something I just saw on the timeline right now as I was posting the link for everyone to come in. And if you guys are tuning in, if you guys want to jump on and you guys want to talk about the Deebo situation and you guys want to give you guys a spiel without having to type a long thing, go ahead and hop in with us, right? We're here for you guys. We're here to talk with you guys, and that's what we're trying to do. But I saw a thing from PFF, which was very interesting, right? So PFF had a trade straight up AJ Brown for Deebo Samuel straight up, right? Those two players and their two respective teams are having like that little trouble. Would you do that trade straight up?
Now I'll get to that in a minute. I'll just quickly speak on from pick 10. Pick 10, especially for quarterbacks, like you said, is extremely valuable. We've seen it in the past, and I know this is a different player, a better player probably than any quarterback in this class, but the point being quarterbacks are valuable. In 2018, what do the Kansas City Chiefs do? They had pick 27. They trade up to pick 10 to select Patrick Mahomes to eclipse teams behind them. Like I forget who was picking 12th. I think it was the Buffalo, or no, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who wanted a quarterback as well in that class. You trade up to pick 10. What was the compensation? First, a first in the year after 2019, and a third round pick. So that's just a general compensation. You can get a good amount of value from trading down from 10, which the 49ers, if they get that pick, have the ability to do. But Deebo Samuel for AJ Brown, I say hell no. Why? The 49ers are in a situation right now, and I don't think that I'll get to you in a minute. I'll get to you in a minute. And what
You
I'm
know what,
saying,
guys? This is turning into the Marco show. I got to get deep. That's what you're on.
no,
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 I
let
get
me
what you're
explain
saying, though. I
myself.
get what you're saying.
It's nothing to do with the player. But I think the 49ers will be in the exact same situation because A.J. Brown is looking to get paid. We see a disgruntled star in Tennessee. Do you think that that's going to change if the 49ers operate the way that they operate right now? And if so, if you're looking to pay A.J. Brown, then why not pay Deebo Samuel? You have a guy who's a homegrown star who you've had in your system. Instead, if you're looking to pay a player, pay the guy that you have and pay the guy who's been a seamless fit in your system for so long. AJ Brown's a phenomenal player. Like, would I love to have AJ Brown on my team? Yes, but you're going to go through the exact same contract negotiation that you have to deal with right now. And I think that if you trade him, you should have a contract extension in place. And normally teams that do these contract extensions after trading normally overpay a little bit because they need to get that contract extension done immediately. And guess what? It's not like a situation's changing. Tory Dandy represents AJ Brown, meaning Tory Dandy is not going to come push to shove. And instead, he's probably going to require more because he's going to be like, what the heck? You're not doing this for one of my players, yet you're willing to do this for another of my player? Bump up that price. So that's why I say no. In terms of the player, I love AJ Brown on this team. Do I think he's a better player than Deebo? I'm not exactly sure, but I love AJ Brown. AJ Brown is AJ Brown, right?
So me, I would say yeah, and it would be a fast yeah. I mean, if Deebo really wants to be traded, right, and that's on the table, you're replacing a very talented receiver with another Pro Bowl receiver, right? You're exchanging them. AJ Brown was my receiver one in that draft class. I think AJ Brown is a phenomenal receiver. AJ Brown is in my opinion, a better route runner than Deebo Samuel. He gets the yards after the catch like Deebo Samuel. If it wasn't for AJ Brown only playing starting 11 games last year, or actually 13 games last year due to injury, he would have had 3 1,000-yard seasons in a row. He has 24 receiving touchdowns. I believe he has 3 rushing touchdowns. Deebo Samuel is up there, right? Deebo Samuel has a 1,400-yard season, but then he has a 800-yard season, and then he has his injured year where he only had 400 yards. Deebo Samuel altogether only had, I believe he has 10, don't quote me on this, 10 receiving touchdowns, and I believe he has more rushing touchdowns than he has receiving touchdowns. He might have might be like 10 to 11, right? So
you talking about Deebo? You talking about Deebo?
No, yeah, Deebo. Touchdowns to touchdowns, right? Yes.
Yeah, so when we look at it, like Deebo had 6 receiving this year, 8 rushing. Then Deebo last year, or no, not last year, in his freshman, so he has 11. It's 10 and rushing. 11. I believe it's 10 and 11 because he had 1 touchdown last year, 3 in his rookie year, and then 3 rushing his rookie year. So 10 and 11.
So the more productive receiver has been AJ Brown. Outside of last year, AJ Brown has been more productive than Deebo Samuel. So the player who deserves the bigger payday, in my opinion, is a guy like AJ Brown. Now, AJ Brown is a guy who could come in right away. He's going to be one of those guys who just hard-nosed, hard worker. You best believe he's going to give great content when he's running that hill with Jerry Rice, to stuff like that. Like, like me as a content creator, I'm thinking like, damn, I get to talk about AJ Brown running the hill with Jerry Rice. I'm pretty sure he'll get Brandon Ayuk, Jawan Jennings to run that hill with them too. So stuff like that. It's like, whoa, that's kind of enticing for a fantasy, right? We get to see the hill come back and everything. But I would do that deal immediately, because if I know we're trading Deebo Samuel away, I'm going to go get a year younger. I believe AJ Brown is going to be 25, 24 right now, going to be 25. Deebo's 26. So he's a year younger. He has more production over a span of the 3 years. Yes, he was a little banged up last year. His body's going to be a little bit banged up, like as Deebo Samuel's will, because those are the kind of play style that they have. So I would definitely do that deal in a heartbeat, because you're exchanging, in my opinion, they're both elite receivers for each other. And that's something I would do. The Tennessee offense is a very run-heavy offense through Derrick Henry. So it really didn't fit A.J. Brown as much as an offense like Kyle Shanahan with Trey Lance would fit, right? Because Kyle Shanahan wants to push the ball to intermediate deep when he can. And that fits A.J. Brown, or the crossing routes over the middle, the go routes. A.J. Brown could run those very, very well. He ran those at Ole Miss very well. So everything that A.J. Brown does, he would do well and even better in the 49ers offense. So I think that is something that PFF threw out there. Not something that will happen. It's just a fun hypothetical that we could talk about. And we have Surah. How do you say that, Rohan? I'm not good with names. Surya. AJ Brown was one of the best Yak players the past 2 years, and this year his production fell off a cliff. Just off a quality of player, Deebo was better. So his production.
I don't necessarily know. I like the production fell just because of the injury, right? Because he had 13 games. When you compare this year to his rookie year when he had over 1,000 yards and he played 16 games, he had more yards per game. He had 66.8 this year, 65.7 in his rookie year. So really, when you leverage that over a 16, 17 game season, AJ Brown is playing a lot, and AJ Brown, has the ability to have 1,000-yard seasons. You said it. He would have had 1,000 yards if he wasn't injured. So I don't necessarily think it fell off a cliff in a way. I also think it has to do with quarterback play and him having Julio Jones alongside him, who, while he was injured as well, I think that, that's another wide receiver too, right next to you.
So I think it was an interesting conversation, right? So let's go a little bit more in depth with Deebo Samuel, right?
Yeah.
So I did go out there. I did put a tweet out based on what I heard. Um, it did get a lot more traction than I thought. I thought with a little bit followers that only my 49er people would see. I guess the teams that I had in the tweet got a hold of it, and I actually loved it because this is a very legit source that I've had, and this is the source that's been telling me that Deebo Samuel was potentially going to get traded, and that the contract negotiations with Deebo Samuel was not going well. And I've been
Mhm.
saying this entire time on the podcast, in Twitter Spaces, on Twitter, that it was not going well, and that a trade could very possibly be on the horizon. It is one of those ones that could be happening very, very soon. So I went out and I said, per source, the Eagles, Colts, and Cowboys have all made an offer on Deebo over the past few days to weeks. Um, a lot of people have messaged me, hey, what about the Jets? What about this team? So from what I've heard, the Jets have actually called. They have not made an official offer. Their biggest thing was, if we do make a trade for Deebo Samuel, what is the contract gonna look like? What did he decline from you guys? Because the Jets obviously know, all teams know, the 49ers made a contract offer to Deebo Samuel. That is a for sure. They made a contract offer to Deebo Samuel. He most likely rejected it, maybe didn't even look at it, whatever the case may be. They did make a contract offer. So the 49ers and the Jets had that preliminary talk. Well, this is what he rejected. You might have to up that by whatever the case may be. This is what he wants, whatever. So the Jets are involved. I'm pretty sure the Kansas City Chiefs would be involved since they just lost Tyreek Hill. The Green Bay Packers would be involved, but the 49ers will not make a deal with the Green Bay Packers because of some stuff that went down when the 49ers tried trading for Aaron Rodgers. That will not happen because of that. 49ers don't want to do business with a playoff rival. So that is that. What team do you think would be the team that lands Deebo Samuel if he is traded before the draft?
I think honestly, I know we've been talking, and a team that we both like is the Philadelphia Eagles. Because when we look at it, Philadelphia runs a very similar offense, run centric, at least it should be, with Jalen Hurts, who really hasn't, Devonta Smith is a great receiver, right? Devonta Smith alongside another player who allows Devonta Smith to get off his releases, who allows Devonta Smith to be Devonta Smith, I think that'd be amazing for Jalen Hurts, because having two good receivers where the focus can't be just on one player, I think that's important. And Deebo Samuel fits well there because a lot of people knack his route running. I don't think it's as bad as people say. People always see Deebo Samuel isn't a good route runner. Deebo Samuel isn't a great route runner. No, he might not be an elite route runner, but I don't think that, 1,700 yards or 1,400 yards receiving proves that otherwise. He consistently gets the ball in his hands and makes plays, especially yards after the catch. 10.2 yards after the catch per reception. So I think that that's valuable. I think the Eagles would definitely benefit from that. And in a system that's very similar to the 49ers, I think he's a seamless scheme fit wherever. But I think that that transition is very easy with the Philadelphia Eagles. Why also the Eagles? They host a couple of mid first round draft picks. I think it's 15 and 18 now. I think that's very
Yep.
valuable. And the 49ers can use one of those, trade back maybe once, get an extra third round pick, get an extra second round pick, and then end up having a very solid draft. I think that's a team to look for. The other team that I spoke about with Sunil, Texans at 13. What do you do when you have Davis Mills? You have Brandon Cooks there. You have Nico Collins there. Fairly young group. Add another young piece, Deebo Samuel. For the people that are saying the Houston Texans are in too much of a rebuilding phase to pay Deebo Samuel, well, they just paid Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks is in a very similar age category as Deebo Samuel, so they clearly want to improve their offense. What better way to do it than have a splash like Deebo Samuel? Teams that are in a similar predicament did their splashes this offseason. The Miami Dolphins, they got Tyreek Hill, right? The Jets got a couple of marquee signings in Laken Tomlinson and all, and Jordan Whitehead. So teams are doing these marquee signings. Make your mark. Get Deebo Samuel. They have pick 13. So those are my two. What about you?
I definitely think the Philadelphia Eagles and the New York Jets are the two teams that are essentially going to end up trading for Deebo Samuel, right? And the reason is those two teams have enough capital to make a big push for a guy like Deebo Samuel. The Philadelphia Eagles were in the playoffs. They got knocked out. They're lacking that extra receiver. I don't know if they made the playoffs, but they're right there, right? So they're lacking that receiver opposite of Devonta Smith to go with Jalen Hurts. If you really want to see if Jalen Hurts is that quarterback that can lead you to a Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl for you, you have to surround him with weapons. You have Dallas Goedert. You have Devonta Smith. And if you add Deebo Samuel, it's going to give you a legit trio of weapons, and you're not going to have to draft a player and hope that player can do well with a guy like Jalen Hurts. We know Deebo Samuel could do well with a guy like Jalen Hurts because Jalen Hurts does things that Jimmy Garoppolo did well. He throws the slants well. He throws the over the middle routes well. He throws those crossing routes well. Now, where Jalen Hurts lacks is progressing the field and getting the ball out quickly. And that's something that could actually be at a disadvantage for Deebo. So my thing is that with Deebo Samuel is whatever team he goes to, the 49ers need to realize get as much trade capital as you possibly can and don't send Deebo Samuel to a team that he wants to go to. For example, everyone's saying, well, Deebo's going to be going, he's going to go to whatever team he wants. That's a very good point. The Kansas City Chiefs did that with Tyreek Hill, but does Deebo have that leverage to say, I won't sign a contract with the Houston Texans. I won't sign a contract with the Philadelphia Eagles. I want to play for the Baltimore Ravens, and that's the only team I'll play for. Because that is a team that could actually say, damn, we need a guy like Deebo. He's a physical player. He fits what we do as an offense, as a team, actually, that we play that hard-nosed football. He fits what we do. So can they do that? I don't think they could. I don't think the Ravens would actually trade for him and all that because of the draft capital that they've recently put into receiver. I don't think they'd be willing to do so.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair. And we have a comment here. If Deebo doesn't get traded, will we stay at 61 or do we move up? I think the only way that we have a pick as high as 34 to 41 is if we trade Deebo. I don't think that, honestly, I'm of the preference that we trade back from 61 to acquire another pick so that we can get multiple players in the top 105, even more than we have right now, potentially 4 top 105 players or 4 top 115 players, where that's the bread and butter of this class. So I don't think that we move up. And if we were to move up, safety, edge, or other, it's honestly best player available. But when you move up, you probably have a player in mind. I know a lot of people have like safety in this class. There are a good amount of safeties that should go in the top 45 picks. Jaquan Brisker, Louis Sine, Daxton Hill, and Kyle Hamilton. And like there are a good amount of safeties.
Did you say Louis Sine is going in the second?
I guess I did.
Yeah, I was asking. Did you say that? I didn't hear you.
I said in the top 40.
Top 40. He's actually going, from what I've heard, he's going in the first. He's one of the top safeties to be. So right after Hamilton, he's at safety.
Yeah. Me personally, like what I've seen is Sine, Daxton Hill, and Hamilton are all first-round picks. Jaquan Brisker is a fringe first-round pick. But what I'm saying is, if you move up into that spot, which I think is extremely unlikely given their capital, you probably go and get safety and then address edge later on, especially once you sign Kimoko Toure.
Gotcha. I thought you meant Sine was going to be at 61. I forgot.
Oh, no.
You were talking about trading that. My bad. I thought you meant 61. I was like, oh, that's a whole round off.
Yeah.
But for Deebo Samuel, if they do trade him, I don't think they'll be drafting at 34 to 41. I think they're going to be drafting earlier in that first round. I do think you get a first-round pick out of Deebo Samuel. I do think a team like the Philadelphia Eagles, I think the Jets will eventually, if they really are intrigued by Deebo, what they'll do is they'll try to trade back to a team who wants a quarterback to get to 10. If that team wants to jump up again, they could jump up again. But I think that's the spot for the 49ers to get to in the first round, middle of the first round, where they could take a safety, they could take a receiver. They don't have to take an exact position, but they're going to get a first-round pick plus an early second, so they could do a lot with that. They could go best player available in the first, whether that's edge rusher, corner, safety. They could do best player available in the second. This class is so deep, they could get a guy like Christian Watson at 35, 38, whatever the case may be. So I think they have a prime position. If they do trade Deebo Samuel, you could get safety, edge, or receiver in the first round, and then vice versa in the second round. You could do the same exact order, whatever order they think is best fit for their team going forward. So I think this is a great situation for the 49ers to be in. in terms of it coming out now and saying, hey, look, Deebo Samuel wants to get traded now. Let's get something done before the draft. Because if draft day comes and Deebo Samuel was like, well, I don't really want to play for you guys. You guys should probably just trade me. Then it gets very tricky and you have to wait till the following season in order to trade him to get your first round pick. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It definitely does. And I mean, this kind of gets to our next point, right? Because we're talking about draft capital. And to wrap this show up, I want to ask you, how do we replace Deebo Samuel?
So, how do you replace Deebo Samuel? So, this is a very legit question. You don't. You don't try to
Yeah,
replace Deebo
exactly.
Samuel, and that's what I've been trying to tell people on Twitter in the Twitter Spaces that we had this morning. They were saying, "Well, how do you replace Deebo?" You don't. You don't try to replace Deebo. You bring in a guy. For example, if you bring in Christian Watson, you bring in Christian Watson to be a receiver two alongside Brandon Ayuk, and you have him be Christian Watson. If you bring in Treylon Burks, you bring in Treylon Burks to be Burks. You don't ask him to be Deebo Samuel and do what Deebo Samuel did, because Deebo Samuel does what he does best to his ability. And for example, Treylon Burks does other things that Deebo Samuel can't do. He is more of a deep threat than Deebo Samuel. He plays a little bit higher at the rim than Deebo Samuel does. So you use him to his best of his abilities. Um, you could do, and it's a transaction. It's a word that a lot of people in the Bay Area, if you're an Oakland A's fan, you understand what I'm going to say. You play Moneyball, and by playing Moneyball, I mean you go out and you draft someone in the first round. Let's say the 49ers draft Chris Olave, for hypothetical, Chris Olave or a Gary Wilson, right? Those are the two top receivers from Ohio State. A lot of people like,
Uh-huh.
or Jameson Williams. If they're there at 15 and they think Jameson Williams is going to be that dude, they take Jameson Williams. Then in the second round, they're like, okay, well, damn, we just took Jameson Williams at pick 35. We didn't think nobody thought Wilson was going to drop to 35. Let's jump on it, right? You could play, hey, now you got two very young receivers that you could play, you could go after. And this is something the 49ers could do. And it's one of those situations I think they are kind of going forward, because receiver in the NFL, and I've said this, I don't know if I said this on here or if I said it on another podcast I was with. Receiver in the NFL is one of those positions you don't have to sign and pay every receiver that you produce or that you
Right.
draft and you grow, right? Because receivers coming out of the NFL are or into the NFL are drastically, they are much better receivers now than they have ever been coming out of college, because of the way college is going, where it's a pass heavy offenses, where these receivers have to learn how to run routes. They have to learn these coverages to be good receivers. So I think you could do that and you don't have to worry about a guy coming in and being, for example, a Dante Pettis, right? Dante Pettis' rookie year was actually pretty damn good for a rookie. If we look at it in terms of being a rookie, it was a solid rookie year ending out that season. So his situation much different than a rookie you're going to bring in now, a guy from uh, Ohio State. Ohio State has a track record of producing receivers, and even if you go back to watch these guys' films, Dante Pettis was always a little timid over the middle. That was something that he was always timid of doing, and it was the biggest reason the 49ers got rid of him. So from what I'm trying to say is, you could have that argument. Well, you might have a Dante Pettis, you might have a Deebo Samuel, you might have a Brandon Ayuk, a Jawan Jennings. Who thought a seventh round pick would be a very focal point of the offense last year in the
Mhm.
49ers offense? No
Mhm.
one. No one thought he was going to be that guy. So I think the 49ers are in a good situation to go out and draft two receivers, three receivers, whatever the case they try to do, or even trade for a receiver to help this offense.
Yeah, I mean, I like the point of drafting one early, drafting one late, right? Because early, you don't necessarily have to go for need. Right now, it's not necessarily the need, but in the 49ers receiver room, what are they truly lacking? A guy who's a pure deep burner, maybe possesses 4.2, 4.3 speed in a way, but really the guy that just takes off over the top. They've got amazing route runners in Brandon Ayuk and things like that, but you can get that true deep burner in this type of class later on, and you don't necessarily have to prioritize that with your first receiver pick. Instead, you can just go with the best receiver available that fits your scheme. And so that's why I like the thing about adding two receivers in this draft if you trade Deebo Samuel. Um, The one thing that I think you brought up that's really interesting to me is receivers. It seems like you're right. You don't necessarily have to pay receivers every year now because so many come out of the draft. And so I wonder if we're going to get an increased precedent of receivers being traded for first round picks, teams getting that first round pick and trading receivers. I mean, we've seen it, right? We saw the what do you call it? The Las Vegas Raiders. They traded Amari Cooper. We've seen players get traded. Odell Beckham was traded. So you see players get traded. And then the biggest one, in my opinion, was the Minnesota Vikings trading Stephon Diggs. What do they do with that Stephon Diggs pick? They get Justin Jefferson. So that's
That's worked out
something,
well.
yeah. I mean, that's something that a lot of teams might be more interested in as the receiver market continues to climb and climb. Because when you think about it payment wise, it seems right now receiver is a premium position in the NFL. And with the amount of talent that there is that warranted? I mean, yeah, it's warranted, but it might not be the best way for roster building. So that I think that that'll be an interesting point to gauge over the next couple of years.
And that's the thing that I've been kind of saying, and I tweeted it out, and I don't think I said it on our podcast. I said it on someone else's that the receiver position is that position that it's kind of going to become like the running back position in terms of you could just draft and replace every so often, and unless you have a guy um, like Devontae Adams, I would have never traded Devontae Adams. A guy like Tyreek Hill. And so for me, I think the 49ers have the situation where they have leverage, they have the ability to do what they want. They could eventually turn around and say, "Hey, Deebo, we apologize for what we said or how we said things. We didn't mean to offer you $50 million guaranteed. We actually had a typo. It was supposed to be $75 million guaranteed." They could honestly say something. Now, I'm not saying they're going to say, "Oh, we didn't mean how I said it," but they could be, "Hey, look, sorry, we're willing to offer you $75 million guaranteed. We can't lose you. You're that big of a player to our offense and our team." And he could eventually say, "You know what? You guys are absolutely right. I forgive you guys. $75 million makes sense. Let's go ahead and get that deal done." Right. So
Uh-huh.
even though you request a trade, doesn't mean a trade has to go through. You could play hardball and actually negotiate a contract. What is very tricky is the timeline that it came out. Right. It's literally a
Right.
week before the draft. So tomorrow will be exactly a week before the draft. So that's where it becomes tricky for the 49ers.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it does. It does. And that's why I've been saying this week, I still think even with this trade request in a way, we don't even know if it's trade. I mean, people have reported that in a way, but honestly, it's just a way to kind of get both sides in a way back at the table at a reasonable price to Deebo Samuel standards. I think that it's too hard to get a trade done in this next 8 days because not only do you have to find a package that the 49ers want in terms of that King's ransom, you also have to find a way to get Deebo Samuel to agree to an extension with this new team, which he's in no play or he really doesn't have an incentive to do because he stands to make more money once other receiver deals come off the board, which likely isn't going to happen within the next 8 days. And so when you look at it, there are too many dominoes that need to fall before Deebo Samuel eventually gets traded, which is why I don't necessarily think the 49ers are going to have a chance with their standards to move him at the draft or before the draft, which is why when you look at it, I think Deebo Samuel remains a 49er in 2022 because I don't think there's value in trading him for 2023 picks because when you try and trade him for 2023 picks, you're not benefiting your team in 2022. And when you're not benefiting your team in 2022, what's the biggest objective of this year? Maximizing the value of Trey Lance's rookie contract. You're wasting another year of that rookie deal, which you already did last year by having him redshirt. It's not necessarily a waste last year because you redshirted him and had him prepare for this year, but this year, if you're not maximizing his contract, it's just hindering that chance, that Super Bowl window. And that's why I think that Deebo Samuel will remain a 49er, be it that he gets an extension or play on the final year of his rookie deal. What about you?
See, I actually don't mind if the 49ers make a trade and acquire 2023 draft picks because 2023
Interesting.
draft is very deep. It's very deep in terms of um, quarterbacks, receivers, in my opinion. And I've already gone to starting to look at setting up a board for 2023 because 2022, I'm pretty much done with my 2022 class. So I'm looking
Uh-huh.
at that 2023 class, and there's a lot of receivers, there's a lot of quarterbacks on that board where I'm have like six or seven guys who could potentially be first round grades, right? And that's
Right.
going into the season. Seven quarterbacks going into the season with potentially going to end up being first round grades prior to the season. So for me, it's like, dang, if the 49ers get let's say they make a trade with the New York Jets. New York Jets aren't going to be a playoff team with Deebo Samuel. They're going to be about 15 to 10 or 15 is where they're going to be drafted. They're not going to be that much better with Deebo Samuel than they were last year, right? That's my
Correct.
opinion because
Mhm.
the way the roster's built, I don't think Zach Wilson is the answer. I really don't. So you have that pick, right? You could turn that pick into a lot of picks because there's going to be teams after a quarterback. You're going to have teams still drafting at the back end of the draft because of trades. For example, Miami Dolphins, right? They might be at the back end of the draft, even though they just gave up picks for Kansas City. They still own our first round pick. They might say, you know what, we have to trade up to get our quarterback because Tua Tagovailoa isn't the answer. We might have the Saints who end up being later in the draft wanting to trade up to get a quarterback, right? So there's a lot of situations if this draft goes, that the next year's draft could be very valuable as long as you get a receiver this year as a rookie who could be a legit receiver 2, receiver 3. I think the 49ers will be fine because the 49ers still have Brandon Ayuk, they have George Kittle, they have Jawan Jennings. I do believe Malik Turner is going to be a much better receiver than he has been in his career. He just needs the opportunity. And that's something we talked about before. The opportunity needs to be there for him, and he could be a legit receiver in the NFL in terms of being a receiver 3 or receiver 4. So you could be a receiver by committee kind of thing. I think the 49ers are in a good situation if they get a pick this year and they have a lot of picks next year. That's something they could do going forward. It does kill your Trey Lance hype and Trey Lance 4 years you have left with him on his rookie deal, but I think it's
Right.
very possible the 49ers could do that and accept some picks next year because you could be the first team on the board to go after receiver, and you could get a guy like um, Jackson,
Jackson
from
Smith and Jigba. Yeah.
yeah, from Ohio State, who I believe is going to be a top receiver in the NFL. You have him on the board. You'll probably be the first team to actually take him, right? So that's something I could look forward to. I would rather have the opportunity to take next year's draft class at receiver because I think it's a higher end draft class at the top of the draft than this year's. This year, we're going to see receivers go in that 18 to 20 range versus next year with Smith, you have Addison from Pitt. Those two guys are going to be pushing for the top 10. So that's something that the 49ers could look at. The 49ers are obviously looking at every possible scenario. It's just hard, man, because as a 49er fan, we all want Deebo Samuel to be
To
on the
remain at 40.
roster. Yeah, so it's one of those ones but from what I've heard, it has not sounded like it from the very beginning of contract negotiations. So it's just a matter of when he's traded, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's fair. Like I think that 2023, you might get the better player, right? If long term wise, I just wonder, is that the most valuable thing? Because then you also have to worry about that rookie acclimating the NFL in your system and that type of thing next year. And it also does significantly decrease your chances of a Super Bowl this year if you move on from Deebo Samuel without a player of similar not necessarily similar caliber, but a player that can somewhat produce at the position, which you can draft in the first round this year.
So yeah, see, like that's a very a big question, right? That people should have. Like, well, does Deebo Samuel reduce the possibility of winning a Super Bowl? Obviously, 100% it does, right? So if that's the case, well, why not? As soon as you get those picks, hey Tennessee, you guys haven't figured anything out. We'll make that trade for AJ Brown. Well, even if we have to overpay for AJ Brown, we'll make that trade because if you really want to
Because then
try
you
to
have to
keep
deal with the contract negotiations. I think that the point is
either way though, Rohan, is you have to get a contract negotiation with Deebo Samuel, and if he doesn't want to get a contract negotiation with Dunn, we do know that AJ Brown really wanted to be a 49er before he was drafted. So that's something that could play a factor into him wanting to get a contract done with the 49ers. Even if the 49ers are going to have to, whatever receiver they get, if they get an elite receiver, they have to pay him. And if they're not willing to pay Deebo Samuel, what receiver are they willing to pay, right? So that's one of those ones where, well, I mean, if we're gonna have that hypothetical where you're gonna have Deebo Samuel, you're gonna have AJ Brown, you eventually have to pay one of them, right? If they don't want to pay Deebo, they're not gonna want to pay any elite receiver. So might as well get the best draft capital moving forward, where you could replace him with someone like a Jackson Smith, right, or a Addison
Yeah.
out of Pitt. So if down the road, whether because I don't see a getting that pick 10, you're not taking a receiver at pick 10. Do you think you would take would you take a receiver at pick 10?
No, I trade down.
See that you're going to trade down, and those trade down, trading for picks this year isn't as smart as getting a pick for the following year in the first round, because for example, the cream of the crop is you're always going to get the better athletes in that first round, right? So if you're trading down, you're most likely going to take a receiver this year. Most likely.
I agree.
That would be your plan, to take a receiver this year. But like you just said, you're relying on that receiver to get acclimated into the NFL, to get adjusted to this offense, right? So
And
what's
I think
the difference
that's the case next year as well, though.
But I think the same thing is you would have to get a receiver next year as well too. Why? The NFL is one of those positions. The receiver is one of those positions in the NFL where you can't have too many great ones, right? For example, the Dallas Cowboys had a bunch of receivers. The Pittsburgh Steelers always have a bunch of receivers. Guys like that, right? So that's the things with the NFL. The Cincinnati Bengals, the Los Angeles Rams, they had a bunch of legit receivers, where I think that's the way the NFL is moving, where you just have to have so many good cheap contract receivers instead of having those elite receivers getting paid $25 million, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And we also have to think too, George Kittle is not going to be used as a blocking tight end like he has in the past, right?
Agreed.
So that's something that we should see George Kittle be the elite receiving tight end he once was a few years ago.
Yeah. No argument here.
So that's it for today's episode. Me and Rohan appreciate you guys for tuning in to the 49ers Red Zone. Deebo Samuel's requested a trade. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because as soon as if a contract is finalized with the 49ers, if something like that happens, immediately Rohan and I will do our best to jump on. We should be on for the 49ers draft. If they are drafting in their first round, me and Rohan are going to try our best to be live as soon as that pick is made. Thank you.